Political activist Candace Owens says the time has come for African Americans to unshackle themselves politically. And the outspoken conservative isn't afraid to point out why she feels many of the left's policies actually hurt the Black community. As a conservative firebrand eager to tackle controversial issues of the day, Owens is challenging Black Americans to think outside the box.
Whoa. In today's session, we are going to talk about what Candace Owens fails to understand about Black people. For far too long, the narrative within Black communities in the United States has been one of external blame. Historically, the finger has often been pointed at white people, particularly conservative white people, as the root cause of struggles and suffering experienced by Black Americans. But recently, voices like Candace Owens, Kanye West, and even Donald Trump have flipped the script, claiming that it's actually the Democrats who bear the blame. This shifting blame game begs a critical question. Are Black communities truly powerless, needing someone else to change their situation, or is it time to rethink the narrative entirely? The issues plaguing Black community, such as high rates of fatherless households, illiteracy, and crime, are well documented. It's true that public policies have at times created environments that encourage or exacerbate these challenges. The legacy of redlining, mass incarceration, and other systemic issues cannot be ignored. But does moving the blame from one political party to another truly address the underlying problems? Or does it simply distract from the real work that needs to be done? Blame, whether directed at conservatives, liberals, or any other external force, is an easy way out. It allows communities to avoid the difficult introspection and accountability that are necessary for meaningful change. Yes, systemic issues exist, and yes, they have a significant impact on opportunities and outcomes within Black communities. However, to focus solely on these external factors is to ignore the agency and power that individuals and communities hold. This is something that I have in common with Candace Owens. Let's take the example of fatherless households. This is a complex issue with roots in both historical and contemporary policies, but it's also a social issue that can be addressed at the community level. Programs that mentor young men, promote responsible fatherhood, and support single mothers can and do make a difference. Literacy rates can be improved through community-driven education initiatives, mentorships, and after-school programs. Crime can be reduced by fostering environments where young people feel valued, supported, and connected to opportunities. This isn't unique to the Black communities in the United States. We see similar patterns in African countries where leaders often deflect accountability for poor governance and social issues by blaming the West. This externalization of blame serves as a smokescreen, preventing citizens from holding their leaders accountable and delaying much-needed internal reforms. Now let's talk about Owens' perspective. Candace Owens is known for her outspoken criticism of the Democratic Party and her support for conservative policies, often arguing that these are more beneficial for the Black community. However, there are several key aspects that many believe she overlooks or downplays in her assessments. Owens often argues that systemic racism is not a significant factor in the current struggles of Black Americans. She tends to emphasize personal responsibility over the acknowledgement of structural barriers that have been in place for centuries. I'll give you an example. Today, the house I live in has a stipulation that said no Negro, no Black person could purchase this property. No black person, it's not something I'm making up, it's true, it's real. I can show it to you. No black person can purchase this property. Now, we've made progress. Today, I live in the property. Nothing has happened to me. But that's real. Those are issues that people dealt with at that time. So this includes the lasting impact of slavery, Jim Crow laws, redlining, and mass incarcerations, and all of which have contributed to disparities in wealth, education, and criminal justice outcomes. By focusing primarily on individual responsibility, Owens may miss the broader socioeconomic disparities that disproportionately affect black communities, such as access to quality education, healthcare, and employment opportunities. While Owens praises Trump for lowering black unemployment rates, she may overlook that economic inequality within the black community remained high, and that much of the economic gains during Trump's presidency benefited the wealthiest Americans. The focus on overall employment figures does not fully capture the quality of jobs or wage growth, which often lagged behind for black workers. Some of Trump's economic policies, such as tax cuts for the wealthy and deregulation, may have short-term benefit but can lead to long-term issues like increased income inequality and reduced social safety nets, which disproportionately impact black communities. Owens acknowledges the influence of public policies on communities, but often frames these policies as harmful only when implemented by Democrats. This overlooks the fact that policies from both parties have had complex effects, and that some Republican policies have also contributed to issues like mass incarceration or underfunding of public education, which have harmed black communities. Owens advocates for self-reliance and personal responsibility, which are important values. However, she tends to dismiss the role of government assistance in providing a safety net and creating opportunities for those who face systemic barriers. Owens often uses polarizing rhetoric that can alienate many within the black community. Her critiques of figures like George Floyd or movements like Black Lives Matter are seen by some as lacking empathy or nuance, focusing more on discrediting these symbols rather than addressing the underlying issue they represent. Owens praises Trump for his policies, but tends to downplay or excuse his divisive rhetoric and actions that have been widely criticized as racially insensitive or outright racist. This includes his comments about shithole countries, his equivocation in condemning white supremacists, and his administration's policies on immigration and voting rights. Owens' focus on race and politics often overlooks the intersectionality of issues like gender, class, and sexual orientation. For example, black women face unique challenges that are not always addressed by a purely conservative framework, such as disparities in healthcare or representation. Candace Owens is indeed onto something when she advocates for self-reliance, personal responsibility, and conservative values as potential solutions for the black community. These are principles that can empower individuals and encourage economic independence. However, the challenge arises in her binary approach to these issues, where she frames the conversation as a strict dichotomy between conservative and liberal ideologies. Owens often attribute the problems in the black community either to be the failings of liberal policies or to the idea that conservatives are the sole saviors. This binary thinking limits the scope of solutions and oversimplifies the complex realities that many Black Americans face. The issues impacting the Black community, such as systemic racism, economic inequality, and educational disparities, are not the sole product of one political ideology. They are the result of a multitude of factors, including historical injustices, socioeconomic challenges, and policy decisions from both sides of the political spectrum. The idea that a conservative messiah will solve the problems of the Black community is an oversimplification. Real progress requires a nuanced understanding that transcends political labels. Effective solutions will likely involve a combination of conservative values like personal responsibility and entrepreneurship, alongside liberal principles such as social safety nets and affirmative action. Communities cannot be pigeonholed into choosing between two ideologies. Instead, they must evaluate policies based on their real-world impact and choose leaders who are genuinely committed to addressing their unique needs. The path to empowerment and progress for the Black community and any community requires moving beyond the binary framework and embracing a more holistic approach that considers the complexities of the issues at hand. This is what Candace Owens may not fully grasp: that the solutions to the challenges facing Black Americans are not strictly conservative or liberal, but rather a thoughtful blend of ideas that address the specific needs and aspirations of the community. By moving beyond a binary mindset, the conversation can evolve into one that truly seeks to uplift and empower rather than dividing along ideological line. Here is another important element that Candace may be overlooking. When a political party comes into power, its agenda is typically broad and multifaceted, aiming to address a wide array of issues that affect the entire electorate. The challenges faced by the Black community are just one of many considerations, and unless there is a strong organized advocacy from within the community, these issues may not be prioritized. Political parties are driven by a need to maintain broad support, which often means balancing the interests of various constituencies. The Black community, like any other group, must be strategic and vocal in advocating for their concerns. Without consistent pressure, lobbying, and engagement, there is a risk that their issues might be overshadowed by other pressing matters or on the political agenda. This highlights the importance of political engagement and coalition building within the Black community. Strengthening their influence in the political arena requires not just relying on promises from any party, but actively participating in the political process, whether by voting, organizing, or holding leaders accountable. The community's needs are more likely to be addressed when they are seen as a significant and organized voting bloc with clear, actionable demands. In essence, political change is complex, and solving the problems of the Black community or any community requires more than just expecting solutions to come from one party or ideology. It demands active involvement and a strong, unified voice that can influence policy decisions and ensure that the community's needs are consistently represented and prioritized. The blame game in America and Africa, drawing parallels. We're going to compare and contrast. The blame game is a recurring theme in both Black America and various African countries, where historical, social, and political challenges are often attributed to external forces rather than focusing on internal solutions. While this narrative stems from real historical grievances, it has also played a negative role in both contexts, often leading to a sense of victimhood and paralysis that hinders progress. The blame game in Black America is deeply rooted in the history of slavery, segregation, and systemic racism. The ongoing effect of these historical injustices are still evident in disparities in wealth, education, criminal justice, and healthcare. The narrative often centers on the idea that white America, particularly conservative white America, is responsible for the continued struggles of black communities. Now, let's talk about Africa. In many African countries, the blame is often placed on colonialism and neocolonialism. Leaders frequently cite the legacy of European colonization, which left many African nations with arbitrary borders, undeveloped economies, and weak institutions. Additionally, external forces like Western influence and global economic systems are often blamed for ongoing issues like poverty, corruption, and underdevelopment. Now, what are the parallels in the blame game? In both contexts, there is a tendency to externalize blame rather than focusing on internal challenges. In Black America, systemic racism is often cited as the primary obstacle to progress, while in Africa, the colonial legacy and Western interference are seen as the main culprit. This externalization of blame can foster a sense of victimhood and disempowerment. In Black America, this can manifest as a belief that progress is impossible without systemic change, which may seem out of reach. In Africa, it can lead to a reliance on foreign aid and external solutions rather than developing homegrown strategies for growth and development. Now, why this attitude has played negatively? One of the main negative impacts of the blame game is the reduction of a sense of agency. When individuals or communities believe that their fate is entirely in the hands of external forces, it can lead to a lack of initiative and self-reliance. In Black America, this might manifest as a reluctance to pursue entrepreneurial endeavors or educational opportunities, believing that systemic barriers will always stand in the way. In Africa, it might lead to over-reliance on foreign aid and a lack of investment in building strong institutions. By focusing on external factors, there can be a failure to address internal issues that are within the control of the community or nation. For example, in Black America, the focus on systemic racism can sometimes overshadow the importance of addressing internal challenges like community cohesion, education, and crime. In Africa, blaming external forces for economic difficulties can prevent leaders from tackling corruption, improving governance, and investing in infrastructure. The blame game can perpetuate a cycle of negativity, where communities and nations become stuck in a narrative of victimhood, which in turn justifies inaction or poor governance. In Black America, this might mean that systemic issues like crime and poverty are not effectively addressed. In Africa, it can result in continued corruption and mismanagement as leaders deflect responsibility onto external forces. The way forward: taking responsibility. Both Black America and African nations need a more balanced narrative that acknowledges the real impact of historical and systemic challenges, while also emphasizing the importance of personal and collective responsibility. Recognizing external factors should not preclude the pursuit of internal solutions. Empowering communities and nations through education, entrepreneurship, and good governance can help break the cycle of blame and victimhood. In Black America, This might mean focusing on building strong families, investing in education, and creating economic opportunities within the community. In Africa, it could involve strengthening institutions, combating corruption, and fostering innovation and self-reliance. Strong, accountable leadership is crucial in both contexts. Leaders in Black America and Africa must be willing to address internal issues and take responsibility for the development of their communities and nations, rather than deflecting blame onto external forces. The blame game in Black America and Africa has deep roots in historical injustices, but has also played a negative role in hindering progress. By shifting the focus from external blame to internal empowerment, both communities can begin to address the challenges they face and create a more prosperous and equitable future. Now, let's compare and contrast Republican-led states with those led by Democrats. We'll do an economic comparison between the two. The economic performance of states led by Republican and Democratic governors often reflect their differing policy priorities, including taxation, regulation, education, healthcare, and welfare programs. And below is a comparison of these states in economic terms. Number 1, GDP growth and job creation. We'll start with the Republican-led states. GDP growth. Historically, many Republican-led states, particularly those in the South and Midwest, have focused on pro-business policies like lower taxes and less regulation. These states often have lower cost of living and have attracted businesses and individuals seeking a more favorable economic environment. States like Texas, Florida, and Tennessee have seen robust GDP growth and job creation, particularly in sectors like technology, energy, and manufacturing. Let's talk about job creation. Republican states tend to promote business-friendly environments, leading to job creation, particularly in sectors like oil and gas, Texas, North Dakota. In technology, we have Texas, Arizona, and in manufacturing, we have Indiana and Tennessee. These states often prioritize low taxes and reduce regulation, which can attract businesses and entrepreneurs. Now, let's shift the gear. Let's go to the Democrat-led states. GDP growth. Democrat-led states, particularly on the coasts, like California, New York, and Massachusetts, often boast some of the highest GDPs in the country. These states are hubs for industries like technology, finance, and entertainment, which drive substantial economic growth. However, their growth can be more uneven, with significant prosperity concentrated in urban areas. Let's talk about job creation. These states often have higher minimum wages and stronger labor protections, which can lead to higher paying jobs, but may also discourage some businesses from expanding. California, for example, has seen significant job growth in technology and entertainment, but has struggled in other sectors due to high living costs and stringent regulations. Let's talk about unemployment. And we'll start with Republican-led states. Republican-led states generally have lower unemployment rates, partly due to lower taxes and fewer regulations that can make it easier for businesses to hire. States like Utah and Nebraska often report some of the lowest unemployment rates in the country. Let's talk about Democrat-led states. Some Democrat-led states, particularly those with large urban centers, have higher unemployment rates, particularly in sectors hit hard by automation or globalization. However, These states often invest heavily in social services and unemployment benefits, which can provide a safety net for displaced workers. Let's talk about cost of living. Republican-led states. Many Republican-led states have lower average wages, but this is often balanced by lower costs of living. States like Mississippi, Arkansas, and West Virginia have some of the lowest wages in the country, but also the lowest living costs. This can make these states attractive for businesses, but challenging for workers seeking higher incomes. Let's go to the Democratic side. Democrat-led states, especially those on the coasts, tend to have higher average wages, but also a much higher cost of living. For example, California and New York have some of the highest median incomes in the country, but also the highest housing costs, which can offset income gains. Now let's talk about taxation and public services. Republican-led states often prioritize lower taxes, particularly income and corporate taxes. This approach can attract businesses and wealthy individuals, but often results in fewer public services, lower investment in education, and less robust social safety nets. States like Texas have no state income, which is a significant draw, but also result in lower public service funding. In Democratic-led states, which often have higher taxes, fund more extensive public services, including education, healthcare, and social welfare programs. States like New York, California have high income taxes which fund expansive public service programs, but can also drive some residents and businesses to lower tax states. Both Republican-led and Democrat-led states have strengths and weaknesses in their economic policies. Republican states often attract businesses and individuals with lower taxes and less regulation, leading to job creation and economic growth. However, they may struggle with higher poverty rates and lower public services. Democrat-led states, on the other hand, often provide more robust public services and higher wages, but at the cost of higher taxes and living expenses. Ultimately, the best model depends on the priorities and needs of the residents in each state, including you. So for Candace to assume that or to preach that conservative values are the best to help uplift the Black community out of the situation it's in is a half-baked solution. And this is a message to Candace Owens. The issues you bring up are critical, and the conversation around them is necessary for the progress of the Black community. However, the approach of shifting blame from one political group to another doesn't address the core problems we face. Yes, it's true that historical and systemic issues, including those perpetuated by liberal policies, have impacted the Black community. But simply pointing the finger at liberals and elevating conservatives as a solution is not enough. The reality is far more complex. The Black community's challenges go beyond the binary of liberal versus conservative. Our issues are deeply rooted in both historical injustices and ongoing systemic barriers that require a multifaceted approach. Solutions won't come solely from aligning with one political ideology over another. They will come from a unified focus on what truly benefits the community, regardless of political affiliation. Supporting a political figure or party should be based on the tangible benefits they offer and the respect they show to our community. While you advocate for conservative values, and there are merits in self-reliance, entrepreneurship, and traditional values, it's equally important to hold leaders accountable when their actions or rhetoric undermine the very community they claim to support. President Trump, whom you often defend, has had moments where his rhetoric has been divisive and harmful to the Black community, whether it's his reluctance to condemn white supremacy, unequivocally, or his handling of issues like criminal justice reform, the respect and understanding he shows or fails to show are just as important as the policies he implements. The black community shouldn't be forced into a box defined by political allegiance. Instead, we should be critical thinkers who evaluate candidates and policies based on their potential to address our specific needs and concerns. We need leaders who do not only talk about uplifting the community, but who also demonstrate through their actions that they value our lives, our contributions, and our future. Let's move beyond the blame game and focus on holistic solutions that include personal responsibility, community empowerment, and holding all political leaders accountable regardless of their party. This is how we will find true progress and unity within the black community. Thank you.